kójókójó làbẹ́wò ìkúkú dùkú lóko Podium International wọ́n ti wà tipẹ́tipẹ́ látìgbà tí wọ́n ti ń bàbọ̀ wọn ò fìgbà kan tẹ́rì o wọ́n ti wá ṣe bẹ̀bẹ̀ wọ́n ti gbé bẹ̀bẹ̀ dé Podium Cinema ni wọ́n tún gbé dé Podium Cinema lórí YouTube ẹ fọ́lọ̀ wọn kẹ́ ẹ láìkì wọn kẹ́ ẹ subscribe ibẹ̀ lẹ́tì mọ̀ wọ àwọn àjá àbálẹ̀ fíìmù ẹ̀dọ̀kí fíìmù tó léfò gan tààrà Podium Cinema mo bẹ́rí fún yín fíìmù mẹ́sàn-án ọ̀tọ̀ọ̀tọ̀ ni wọ́n kó jáde o àwọn gbàǹkọ́gbé fíìmù èkíní májẹ̀mú ẹ̀gbọ́n èkejì my wet ẹ̀kẹta ọmọ ẹni ẹ̀kẹrin àlàmú èkó ẹ̀karùn-ún àìmọ̀ ṣe wá rí pé nǹkan kì í ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ ràgbó ó kọjá bẹ́ẹ̀ eléyìí lẹ́ti kẹjù èdè Yorùbá ni wọ́n fi ṣe àwọn fíìmù yìí ẹlẹ́ẹ̀kẹfà sẹ́ẹ̀kẹsàn-án èdè òyìnbó ni wọ́n kọ́ ẹ̀kẹfà tẹ́mà èkeje the casting ẹ̀kẹjọ M1 the detective ẹ̀kẹsàn-án 100 M1 the detective at 100 orí síríìsì lẹ́fì máa wò ó ìyẹn dàgbéléwò nìyẹn Podium International Podium Cinema ẹ fọ́lọ̀ wọn kẹ́ ẹ láìkì wọn lórí YouTube wọ́n wà lórí Facebook wọ́n wà lórí Instagram Podium Cinema ó ti dọbẹ̀ ẹ subscribe.
Good day, listeners. Welcome to today's program. Sorry for being a bit late. It's just due to some technical reasons. My producer is out of town, so I've got to do most things by myself. And sorry again for not coming on air on Saturday for matters arising. Hopefully we'll make that up for you this coming Saturday. Today, we're looking at the administration, so the administrative service under the colonial government. So welcome to the analysis. So we are on episode 7 now. Last week I said episode 7, so pardon me for that. Last Wednesday was episode 6, and this is episode 7. So far, we've looked at several items for with regards to the amalgamation of northern and Nigeria, southern Nigeria, and we see the differences both in terms of the administration, how it was governed, the native system, the British system, the northern system, and the southern system, what has changed, what is different. And we looked at revenue, indirect rule, direct rule, imposition of taxation due to the war of 1914. So today we'll be looking at how it was really administered, and hopefully we can understand how it was all brought together. Since it's now an amalgamated entity of two protectorates, definitely most things will be different. So imagine buying two companies at the same time, and company A produce butter and company B produce bread. So that means rather than buying selling bread, because the process of making bread is different and the process of making butter is different, but you want to merge these two together. What they do is owners of company do what they call cross-selling. So whilst they're selling you bread, they're also telling you, oh, we've now acquired this company that's also selling butter. Do you want butter? So they sell each to you pari passu. And vice versa. If you come to buy butter, you say, what are you eating your butter with? Some people could say, oh, I'll eat my butter with yam. Some could say, I'll use it to fry egg. They're like, oh, do you want bread? So that's what's happened here in the context of Nigeria. Unfortunately, this has to do with the lives of people as well. So in as much as it's got to do with the country, it's also got to do with the lives of the individuals that we are involved. So today we're looking at the administration. So how did it work? How did they make it work? mind you, I told us that it was a different way the North was governed, and it was a different way the South was governed. So Lugard, in his wisdom, tried to bring a system of government where there is no jealousy between the North and the South. So, and we know that he amalgamated the two regions because of finance. The British government was always subsidizing the northern government, and the southern government was always in excess. So if the South is in material prosperity, then they could share with the North. As well, there was a challenge of taxation with regards how do you effect the custom duties on liquor and spirits? Because any goods coming from Lagos had to be taxed in Ilorin before it goes to the north. Ilorin was seen as the frontier then. Now, another tax was imposed from goods coming from Tripoli, which is Libya. So from Libya, you encounter Niger Republic, and then you encounter Niger and Nigeria, northern Nigeria. So the custom border was removed in Ilorin, but that of the north was kept. So that of the north was being managed by the West Africa Frontier Forces, which was gulping close to about 214,000 pounds in those days, out of the about 244,000 out of the about 314. So it was very expensive. It was very expensive to actually manage. It was very expensive to actually spend those resources in policing the goods that were coming from there. So they didn't bother. So one of the things that happened was once Lugard had amalgamated it, then there was the challenge of who's going to be collecting the custom duties and how is it going to be shared. Because we've got the central government, the Southern Protectorate Administration, we've got the Northern Protectorate Administration. So what they agreed was that for the first 2 years, it was under the central government. Then later, it was given to the Southern Protectorate, just for our administration. So what happened was that the custom director of customs, had to then provide the receipt of what was gotten, and then they can then know how to share it. So today, if we come to page 16 of the document, which says administrative services. So now, Lugard, here he said the duplication of the department, both in the north and the south. So the department that we are functioning in the north, we are also functioning in the south. And he said the reason for the duplication is because rather than just have one ministry of agriculture or one ministry of education, let each focus on their own administration and develop as with their pace, so that one administration is not slowing down the other one. Now, for the north, mind you, the north is only just come into administration with the south. So they have not been overly exposed to Western governance previously compared to Lagos or the Southern Protectorate. So now they need to sort of look for a way where the funds for the promotion for the civil service would be based on a roster to say, okay, this is how the promotions will be done. So, and then all correspondence with the governor has to come with from the lieutenant governors, and then there was a central secretariat. That central secretariat has a secretary of state. So the person you could regard as secretary of state could be like the minister of interior, who handled that affair. He is not in a political position. So what it does is, if there are laws that were going to be passed, or ordinances and things, he goes about to document them and then put it in writing for the government and for the people to see. So he puts it in a blue book. In Britain, they use red. In colonial Nigeria, they used blue. So Lugard then described that this method worked very well. So he intends to keep it that way. So the head of each political or administrative department is the lieutenant governor. Yeah. So the lieutenant governor is the head of the political conglomerate of their region, and they are also the administrative head of all the departments. So if you're going to have a department, they have to report to the lieutenant governor. So he then looked at grouping all these administrative services together. So majority of the departments were grouped together. Now, this is the reason Lugard was doing this. In terms of grouping them together, now for the administration, what happened was they were now looking for quite a lot of people because the department was now growing. They now needed more skilled labor and unskilled labor. So things like clerical staffs, they weren't getting more of them. So Lugard was now thinking, okay, if he merges these two departments together, those in the secretariat, those in the council can learn, and then you could have transfer of skills. So if you imagine when I said two companies that were merged together, one produces bread and one produces butter. So in order to cut costs and whatever, you could ask those who are making bread that, could you learn how to also make butter? And those who are making butter, you could also tell them, could you learn how to make bread? So that by the time you need to bring each people from these departments to this place, to the other department, then you already have skilled labor. You don't have to retrain people. So those were what he did in terms of the administration. So he then looked at the judiciary and the legal system. So this is the administration now, how he administers the country. So if you imagine today, where we have the executive arm of government, the legislative arm of government, and the judicial arm of government, which are the three arms of government that we have today. So he tried to replicate that model as well in the system of governance. But mind you, we also have the native system of government. So they also played a role. They were a branch on their own. So so for the North, I told us he employed the services of the powerful emirs, who he then gave residents. So residents are political appointees. And these political appointees for the North, they did not interfere. They allowed the emirs or whoever they put in charge to make their money and pay remission to the resident. The resident is just to watch. Whereas for the South, they had the administration that is working perfectly, and more so that he had introduce direct taxation now for the South. So now what he now did was for the judicial and legal system, once the two colonies, the two protectorates were amalgamated, so the chief justice and poison judges. So poison judges, they're like magistrate judges, which they've got law degree, and they've practiced for quite some time. So what he did was they were abolished. So they had to remove those ones. So the system they now brought was they had what you call archivists. So archivists is when you create a situation where, like a mobile court. So the judges will go to a town and set up a mobile court. Then people who have cases will bring their cases. So there's a particular time they will say, they will announce to the people that, oh, the judges are coming so time or so time. So those judges will come at that time. You bring your case, they hear it, they give you judgment, and then you can go meet the relevant agency that would implement the judgment for you. So what he did was he abolished the position of chief justice, the prison judges of both the north and the south. So now a chief justice, just one. So rather than have two chief justices, they now have one chief justice and 4 prison judges in lieu of the 7 they had before. Now, the judges also took 5 months leave. So instead of going for 5-month leaves, he now made a window for 4 months leave, starting from 1st of June till 1st of October. So their holiday was now June, July, August, and September, 4 months. So if you want to bring cases to court, you have to do it between, so that's October and May. So by June, the judges will go on holiday. Now, that does not say that if there is a case, it cannot be heard between June and, but except it's in the case of emergency or if anything urgently has to be done. So that's when those people will go on holiday. And he saw that it worked really fine. I don't know if that system will work now. I know France or the French colonies, they still practice that system today, which is why when Oloyegbo was arrested in Benin Republic, they said the judges were going on holiday, and when they come back, they would look into his case. But thank God today he's a free man. And then he made provisions for police magistrates. So one was for Calabar and one was for Lagos. And he also made provision for station magistrates. So these station magistrates also looked at things that affected the community. So going to custom, which I've explained before, so I'm not going to go more into explaining the customs. It's just the ones that were abolished in Ilorin. And then for Marine also had one department. So what he did with Marine was the entire northern fleet was now repaired, and then they had to charge people for both high tide and low tide to cross the River Niger. At this time, majority of the traveling was done via ferry or boat or whichever. So that's what typically happened. And then he had a director of medical and sanitary services. So this director of medical and sanitary service, they also provided dental care. For majority of us in Africa, let me say, we're very lucky because we have good dental. Majority Europeans are not too fortunate in that regard because the majority of them eat chocolate and it affects their teeth. So it was very important for him that he has this, especially that there are quite a lot of diseases that were prominent then, especially malaria. And malaria was very deadly in those days compared to now that you can treat it with the quinines and things. So malaria was very deadly then. So he had a director of medical services who, and majority of us grew to see that system because the system of hygiene was a very important one. I remember in the 80s, late 80s, 90s, we used to have these environmental sanitation officers, and we used to call them wole wole. What wole wole will do then, for I know the younger generations may not understand what they call wole wole. So what they do then is basically they come to your house and inspect the sanitary condition of your house to see whether it is fit for purpose. If it's not hygienely kept, they could actually seal up your house. So that was their duties. But today, nobody cares whether you live in a slum or a dungeon or you live in the worst conditions. Nobody actually cares. But in those days, those were one of the things Lugard did actually provide. Now, so if we look at the major means of transport then was railway. There was not much cars in those days, and there was not much aeroplane flying as well. I guess the first aeroplane that ever flew on the air, I think, was 1902 or so. So if you imagine the many military battles that's been happening in the world before, they've always been fought on ships. So 1902, 1903 was when they tested the first plane and flew for 2 minutes. And 1914 was the first time it flew commercial passenger. So this was 1919, so just 5 years after the innovation. And cars was not plenty then. So the major means of transportation, because Britain had already developed the iron and steel industry in the 19th century, which was in the 1800s. So they were able to bring that technology to Nigeria. It's so unfortunate that majority of those train stations and train lines, my generation didn't grow to see it. It's only beginning to come up again because the train has proven over the years to be more reliable form of transport. Most of those lines are still very there. I still see majority of them. It's just that they are devoid of the actual trains that could take it. And the government we've got in Nigeria have not really taken time to develop the rail industry. So majority of the transport these days is road. And that explains because the government of Nigeria over the years since 1960 they've done something really terrible against the Nigerian people. Government has over the years absolved themselves of Sister Shola, thank you very much. I can see your comment. They've over the years not done things for people. So if you talk of, say, education, I'm very sure if the colonial government did not start education, present-day government would probably not want to do education. Now, education was one of the primary giveaways of Chief Obafemi Awolowo. Even when all regions refused to give education, Pa Awolowo saw it as a visionary that Education is the only way that you can have an enlightened society. And it is only when you have an enlightened society that you can build a very viable economy. So, in so doing, he made sure education was free for all, as in free for all. But all our present day governors and senators and what do you have them? They've just decided that the ordinary man do not deserve to have the best of education, and they've just basically left it in the hands of the private sector, who now charge exorbitant fees that makes it very difficult for an average man, and it pains somebody like me when you see children who should be in school not able to pay for their school fees, not because of anything, but just because the government feels it's no longer their responsibilities to provide education for the people. They leave their core responsibility. So education is not only one thing that has suffered. An industrial roadmap. We don't have an industrial roadmap in Nigeria today. We don't have a social roadmap to say, okay, how do you bring people together socially? How do you give them a sense of purpose and a sense of duty? We don't have that. We don't have this, people say be patriotic, but for somebody like me, I'm happy that Nigeria is going to fall, because I don't like the fact that we were merged without our consent or without the consent of our forebears. I believe that they should have given us the opportunity to say, okay, let's put it as a vote to the people and see. But that was not the case, because the case of Britain was just to establish a trading post. So for them, they felt that they were doing us a favor, whereas it is our land. Whether they've done us a favor, whether they've not, I'm not going to dwell much on that. So he had director of railway at that time who has to be an engineer, not just an engineer, who has vast amount of experience in that field, which is different from what we have today. Today, you see a minister for communication. He knows nothing about journalism. He has no knowledge of journalism. You will see him there. You have a minister of health, has no idea of what health is, never worked in the hospital. You have a minister of aviation. He's not a pilot. He doesn't know anything about aviation. He's just there. He has no deep knowledge. So the director of railway and works, what he does, what his job is he has to advise the government. So this is the difference between the railway department. Apart from having the director of works and railway, they also have a general manager for the railway corporation. So this is the way Britain runs their railway, because they didn't describe it here, but I'm going to describe how they run their railway. They give franchises. So they have a network, a national railway, national rail line. The national rail line is responsible for building all the train tracks, nothing more. Then they now give franchises. So they could give franchise to say, for Lagos, maybe Otedola is in charge of the network in Lagos axis. They could say Egba Independent is in charge of the network from Oyo to Ogun State. So the director of railway and works has to be knowledgeable in shipbuilding, in dockyard, in several of all those metal works. so that he can be able to advise the government. And then himself would be able to review whatever prices they bring and compare it with the price of what is obtainable in Britain. So those are the criteria they did put. And then he talked about the West African Frontier Force, which have taken time to elaborate in the past. So I'm not going to dwell more on that. But the total were 5,794,000 military officers. And they were the one guarding over almost 19 to 20 million people. So now let's now come to native staff, which is one of the areas that interests me so much when I read this report. Now, if we do a quick calculation here, number one, he said the native staffs were subordinates, and he divided them into two groups: the clerical staff and the artisans. So the clerical staffs, you could call them the office staffs, and then the artisan, you could call them like the tailors, the barbers, and all the other ones. So, but in those days, majority of the non-clerical staff, which are the artisans, are like the cleaners, the janitors, and stuff. And if you look at how much they are paid then to how much Nigeria has deteriorated today, then we should be crying. Now, for a clerk is paid between 25 and 300 pounds sterling every year in 1914. So, in doing the calculation last time, I took us back to what they pay, what it would be this day and age due to inflation and everything. And if we look at that figure, that means that a clerk, an office clerk, who is probably level 2 or level 3, is earning between 2,928 to 36,600 pounds per annum. So just register that in your mind. If you look at our minimum wage in Nigeria today, our minimum wage is just how much? 30,000 naira, which is about 600,000 naira per annum. If you convert it back, that's about 400 pounds per year. So if you're in Nigeria and you're not earning up to 36,000 pounds, and you are imagining that Nigeria will soon better with these current crops of politicians that we have, then I don't know when Nigeria is going to stand up and fight for their rights. Because I cannot see a country where civil servants are earning pittance, 30,000 naira. National Youth Corps members are earning 30,000 naira. That is not enough to rent a house. And then a senator is earning 30 million naira. Look at the stark difference. A senator who goes to the house to just sleep and do nothing, they get wardrobe allowance, they get feeding allowance, they get this, they get that. I don't know who sits down and writes their salary. Now, my advice is this: when Yoruba Nation eventually comes, the people who should write the salary grade should not just be the politicians. So let's have doctors. Let's have, when I say doctor, I don't mean PhD holders. I mean medical doctors, classroom teachers, cleaners. Those people you will not the directors that earn exorbitant. Let's have those traders. Let them sit in panel. If it is 15 people, and design the structure such that a politician is not earning exorbitant salary where the people are suffering. So imagine paying this money and what it would cost. Of course, there was a downside to all this as well, because whilst he was paying this money, a lot of young men, this money entered into their eyes, and so it was difficult for them to even stay at home, because majority of them now became big boys that were earning good money, and felt that they are now in a good position. So majority of them ran away from home to go and become independent. Majority of them left home. They want to go and become independent. So Lugard saw this as a very big problem, and not less because there were shortage of staffs. So once people believe, oh, I understand a little English, I can type, I can do this, they just go and become a clerical officer. So what he now did was that he now introduced apprenticeship. So apprenticeship gives people the opportunity, because one thing it does again was people were comfortable with that position, so they didn't further their education. So he wanted to give people opportunity to further their education. So he gave them apprentice, and whilst being apprentice, you had the opportunity to still go to school if you wanted, and then majority of them still stayed at home whilst they are on the apprentice. It builds more pool of resources where you can get more people to hire when the department is growing, and B, the situation where people are running away from home, which was not helping the family. He didn't want that situation. And then C, a lot of people were always coming to Lagos. So people were always wanting to, oh, Lagos is the next thing. That's where you get all the government job. That's where. So he wanted to make it even and have as many people being trained rather than just having some people staying on the job. And then he now moved to the Legislative Council. So we've talked of the administration, which is like the executive. I'm going to talk of the executive, but I've just talked of the administration. So the governor general, the lieutenant governor, the political staff, the administrative, the departmental. So those ones were like the executive council. We now come to the judiciary, which is the judiciary and legal system. Now we now come to the legislature. So he wants to balance power. But whether that was a balance of power, you tell me. So prior to amalgamation, the northern Nigeria had no executive council. So I told us when he got to northern Nigeria, he just thought, you know what, we can have indirect rule, have the emirs collect the money and pay into the government coffers, and it solves the problem. So they never had executive council, they never had a legislative council like that or anything. So, and for legislative council, it's very funny because there are some different, how will I describe it? Lagos State was the only one that had anything like legislative council. So for Lagos, the Lagos boys or the Lagos big boys that were in the legislative council, they were the elite. So they were either people who had made something for themselves in the industry, or people who were the royal, not royal, I didn't bring anybody from the royal houses to be in the council, but people who well-to-do or people who have studied in the UK and have a good sense of how, because the legislature is just to debate issues before the executives we are able to carry it out. So for the legislative body, before amalgamation, it was only Lagos that had a legislative body. And it was only that legislative body that legislated for the whole of southern Nigeria. So there was no legislative body from southern Nigeria. It was only Lagos. Before amalgamation, it felt it was appropriate. But the problem there was that it was only people living in Lagos that were in that legislative council. So it was not representative enough of the entire country. It didn't show a system where they got the perception of the people. So you now had the Muslim North, and then he said, you know what, that's definitely a no-no. There's no way you can have these few people in Lagos just legislate for the entire country. So he was going to introduce the Nigerian Council. Now, whilst introducing the Nigerian Council, he still maintained the Lagos Council. That's the Legislative Council in Lagos, still maintained that one. And what they were to do was just to legislate for only the colony. But the Nigerian Council will legislate for the entire country. Now, who were these people in this Legislative Council and how were they selected? These were the company representatives. So we talk about Royal Niger Company. Now they've sold Nigeria to Britain, but the company still existed. So they send representative. So the British select 6 officials and 4 unofficials. Out of the 4 unofficials, 2 were Europeans, meaning British, and 2 were native. So previous people who have been part of the Legislative Council have been Kofo Abayomi. So I believe a lot of people would have heard that name before. Adeniyi Jones, Kitoye Ajasa, Adeyemo Alakija, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Henry Carr, Theophilus Adebayo Doherty, NSCC, Ikoli, Jibril Akinpelu Obisheson, Olorunimbe Abubakar. So those are names that, some of those names we're quite familiar with those names, and we know that they were people of influence. So it's merchants, basically merchants, people who owned large corporations. So they just selected people to be the Legislative Council. Just not to say the government is just, so if there's anything the government wants to do, they take it to these people, they sit down, they debate it, and say this is how the people are feeling. So it's just like YSM now, which is trying to bring a legislative body into the entire Yoruba nation struggle, to say, let's have people who will debate issues, and then after a careful deliberation, we can then take it to the grassroots. Now, once Nigeria was amalgamated, what Lugard then did was, once he's created the Nigerian Council, the Governor General will bring out any bill that was going to be passed in the House was going to be, so he can't rule by decree or promulgation. So he bring the bill to say, I want to pass this bill. So just for instance, this the Nigerian fake constitution review that they're doing, Lugard will pass it. So for anything that is not urgent, except it is urgent and they need to debate it immediately. If it's not urgent, they would have to, first of all, put it in the Gazette for 2 months. So they will put it in the Gazette and put it in the notices for people to see and deliberate and discuss. And once they've discussed it, then they will now debate it. And the debate, you wouldn't say it was rich, because majority of the people in that council were also the executive. So I mentioned the executive. So once the Nigerian North and South has been amalgamated, he now created the Nigerian Council. And that council now consisted of 6 officials and 6 unofficials. Out of that 6 unofficials, 4 were Europeans, 2 were natives. The emirs in the north, they were still visitors into that council as at that time. The emir of Kano came as a visitor. The emir of Katsina came as a visitor. The sultan of Sokoto came as... so they have that council once in a year. That council sits once in a year. All the executives, which were about 11 in number, so we have the governor general, the 2 lieutenant governors, who are also the administrators. You have the departmental heads and some few admin heads. They were part of that council. So literally everybody in the executive council was part of it. Then you now have people, captains of industries, and then you have one person representing the Calabar Chamber of Commerce, another one representing the Lagos Chamber of Commerce. So this council, now the council came together and became a Nigerian council. And once they've sat, they will discuss issues, they will debate. So it normally goes on for 3 days. So it's not just once, it goes on for 3 days. The governor general will say the things he needs to say. He will give them the bill, then they will start debating. People will start asking questions. People will start countering. Some people will start, if they don't agree with things, and things they agree with. So it was in the council meeting of 1916. So I told somebody that, or in my session on Thursday last week on Clubhouse, so I did mention that Nigeria paid the war debt. Okay, paid part of the war debt of Britain in the First World War, up to the tune of £6 million. So it was in this council meeting of 1916, they agreed, the whole part of Nigeria agreed that they were going to pay this 16 million, which I will take us to page 47. It described how the money was paid, which I will describe for us. So we paid 6 million, and we also paid the interest on that 6 million loan for over a period of 36 years. So he said in the expenditure, in 1919, we generated, so the whole country combined generated 3.78 million. There's going to be plus and minuses because the military is going to be reduced, and that's going to save 170,000, but he thinks maybe 200,000. It estimated, he did some estimation there, and Once it's done the estimation, he said plus or minus, there's been an expenditure of 4.1 million, 19 or 4.2 million. And then we've generated about 4 million. So which isn't too bad if you compare it to today, where the 2021 budget, we were in deficit of about 6 trillion naira. I don't know how much that will be in pounds, with nothing to show for it. But in today's, in 2022, we are still going to owe another 6 trillion. So not only are we not living within our means, we are borrowing money for the politicians to squander and leave for future generations to come back and pay. So if we go straight to page 48, we'll see it where Lugard then say, if he puts everything together, he thinks the amount they paid for the military, which was the which was the European government, the British government subsidy, grant in aid to the North, was 4.261 million. So for the West African forces, they spent 600,000. So he said, even if you add that 600,000, that's about 4.8, 4.9 million. He said, okay, if you now calculate the money they paid to the Royal Niger Company, he said, on the most liberal calculation, the cost of acquiring Nigeria has not exceeded 4.7 million pounds. That's what it cost them to acquire Nigeria, 4.7. So when they're saying they bought the country, yes, they actually bought it. He now talked about the money they spent in building the train stations in Uganda. And he said, we have accepted to pay 6 million on behalf of the imperial war debt. It will be seen that the vast country, which affords an increasing market for British industry and commerce, has been acquired at no cost whatsoever to the British taxpayers. And that's why I say Nigeria was bought for free. And that is what Lugard is confirming. That, yes, we have paid 4.8 million pounds to buy Nigeria. Nigeria is now paying us 6 million for the money we paid to buy it. So the cost of acquiring Nigeria so far to the British taxpayer is zero. So if it is the money for the staff and everything, I think Britain pretty much did very well for themselves. And for a lot of people that are asking and saying, oh, if Britain acquired Nigeria for free, why are they still holding Nigeria to ransom? Well, it's for the British government to decide and for the Yoruba people to decide. And that's why I say the time to leave that Nigeria is now. Because what Britain wanted was just a market to sell their goods. Do we still buy their goods? Yeah, I think so. Do we sell goods to them? I don't know. But the cost to British taxpayers is zero. That means we paid for our own colonialization. We paid for our own some parts of the colonialization was good, some parts were bad. The parts that were bad was putting us to people who have no value system in line with what we value. Because today, we're not buying as much British goods because we don't have that purchasing power anymore. And that is really affecting even the British. Because they've left the EU. Because once Britain left Nigeria, in 1960, 1963. Their focus started shifting to the EU. And by 1975, they joined the EU with the hope of transferring those trade from the colonies to the EU to sell. And it was good. Britain made a lot of material prosperity because they no longer control Nigeria. So they cannot force us on our policies, what to do and what not to do. And after the Second World War, they were in heavy debt that they're still owing till tomorrow because those debts have still not been paid. And so Nigerians, rather than for the politicians who they handed over to build something good, to build on the legacy of what they have learnt, they've destroyed the country and taken us back to 1850. And today, not only are we worse off than when we were first colonized, it seems the hope of survival in that country that has become the poverty capital of the year is so bleak that many more children will be born into poverty for no cause or no fault of their own. So I'm going to stop here today, and hopefully we'll be back by Wednesday and then continue our program. So we'll be looking at so we've talked about the Executive Council, which if there's time, I will just touch on. But vis-a-vis, we'll now look at how the Executive Council was run and how the judiciary was run in the next episode on Wednesday. So until then, stay blessed and God bless you.
lọ́jọ́kọ́jọ́ làbẹ̀wò kúkú dùkú lóko Podium International wọ́n ti wà tipẹ́tipẹ́ látìgbà tí wọ́n ti ń bàbọ̀ wọn ò fìgbà kan tẹ́rí o wọ́n ti wá ṣe bẹ̀bẹ̀ wọ́n ti gbé bẹ̀bẹ̀ dé Podium Cinema ni wọ́n tún gbé dé Podium Cinema lórí YouTube ẹ fọ́lọ̀ wọn kẹ́ ẹ láìkì wọn kẹ́ ẹ subscribe ibẹ̀ lẹ́tì mọ̀ wọ àwọn àjá àbálẹ̀ fíìmù ẹ̀dọ̀kí fíìmù tó léfò gan tààrà Podium Cinema mo bẹ́rí fún yín fíìmù 9 ọ̀tọ̀ọ̀tọ̀ ni wọ́n kó jáde o àwọn gbáǹkọ́gbé fíìmù èkíní májẹ̀mú ẹ̀gbọ́n èkejì my word ẹ̀kẹta ọmọ ẹni ẹ̀kẹrin àlàmú èkó ẹ̀karùn-ún àìmọ̀ ṣẹ̀wárí pé nǹkan kì í ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ ràgbó ó kọjá bẹ́ẹ̀ eléyìí lẹ́ti kẹjù èdè Yorùbá ni wọ́n fi ṣe àwọn fíìmù yìí ẹlẹ́ẹ̀kẹfà sẹ́ẹ̀kẹsàn-án èdè òyìnbó ni wọ́n kọ́ ẹ̀kẹfà tẹ́mà èkeje the casting ẹ̀kẹjọ M1 the detective ẹ̀kẹsàn-án 100 M1 the detective at 100 orí síríìsì lẹ́fì máa wò ó ìyẹn dàgbéléwò nìyẹn Podium International Podium Cinema ẹ fọ́lọ̀ wọn kẹ́ ẹ láìkì wọn lórí YouTube wọ́n wà lórí Facebook wọ́n wà lórí Instagram Podium Cinema ó ti dọbẹ̀ ẹ subscribe.